He just finished talking with Giants head coach Brian Daboll. We caught up with Pat Leonard from the Daily News, episode 12 of DRGO. So we see behind you, and you're at the Giants facility, and we're very excited to have you. Now, I want to get into your podcast and certainly want to give it the love and admiration that it respects. We'll get there in a few moments. You can certainly take the time to discuss it. Daboll just addressed the media moments ago, right?
He did.
Give us the cliff notes of what he said today about Jackson Dart.
Yeah. So he said that it was his decision, the coach's decision, and only his decision. I asked him if that meant that there might have been disagreement or different viewpoints in the conversation with ownership and the GM, but that ultimately everyone is trusting the coach's call. He said, yes, that is accurate. So I think what we can parse by listening to the details of what Daboll told us today, it's that the organization deliberated, is it too early? Do we wait? Is it good to play him against the Chargers? And the coach is putting it on himself. And I think that is, I believe, based on my reporting, that's accurate in the sense of Daboll's been trying to do this since week one. I mean, he wouldn't commit to Russell Wilson after one game, Dave. They signed Russell Wilson in free agency, handed him the starting job, and yet after one loss where they score 6 points, the head coach is declining to endorse him as his starter for week two.
Pat,
so what does that tell you?
Why did they sign a guy that after 1 week there was discussion within the organization that we might not start him in week two? Someone has to take accountability for that.
Right. So the process was, remember, they signed Jameis Winston technically first. They didn't know how the draft was going to go. So after their first options of Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, they even talked to Joe Flacco. They wanted to talk to Mason Rudolph. They wanted to trade up for Cam Ward. So technically you could say 3 clearly better options did not happen because one team wouldn't make a trade in the Titans and the other 2 players, Stafford and Rodgers, didn't want to play here. So then you go to Wilson. Wilson is Joe Shane's pick, and Daboll certainly was a part of that. But they signed Jameis just in case they don't get the quarterback they want to draft. Daboll and Shane both knew they had to draft a quarterback, and they were trying to address both the veteran and the rookie aspect, the present and the future. Daboll shifted the scouting process that was so centered on Shedeur Sanders to Jackson Dart. He was the primary reason why they drafted Jackson Dart, the coach. And so once they got into training camp and you saw Dart taking a ton of reps behind Wilson and Winston and DeVito relegated to mop-up duty, like they barely got more snaps than you or I did, Dave. It's always been obvious Daboll wanted to get this kid in as soon as he could because he believed that much in him. Remember, the reason these 2 guys have these jobs with the Giants is because of what happened in Buffalo. They drafted and they played early Josh Allen for the Bills. And even though it wasn't perfect, quote unquote, that's the experience they have of having success in the NFL. So that's how we land here. And now we have a situation where with Daniel Jones' success in Indianapolis, Brian Daboll now, the only thing that can save him, because he's not finding a way as a coach to win them games on the margins, right, on the sideline, he needs to demonstrate that Josh Allen was not some one-off unicorn talent, which is what he looks like. But Daboll has this reputation as the quarterback whisperer, but outside of Josh Allen, the resume is not there. So if he's going to prove to John Mara that he still deserves to be this coach, the only way he can do it now is by putting Jackson Dart in the game and making him look like, he doesn't have to be Josh Allen 2.0, but to be the Giants version of that.
This feels to me like this is not a very good team yet again. It's the same offensive line somehow, which is really remarkable. They don't have a ton of weapons. The coaching staff probably feels led by Daboll like this is a Hail Mary. Like what are my other plays that I can come out and say, all right, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. This feels like this is the last play, Pat. And if this doesn't work, he kind of knows he's dead man walking, but why not get this kid as much reps as they can get? And let's see what the final 14 games of the season brings us. Is that a fair assessment or no?
Yeah, no, I think it is the final ripcord, the break glass emergency. Like if you're Brian Dable, you know if you're going to this and it doesn't work, that's it. And that's why. So the frustrating part of his press conference just now with us, he would not get into any detail of why he made the decision. So in other words, fans over the last 24 hours have been wondering, okay, how much of it is they don't think Russ is any good? How much of it is just they can't get a win and the coach is trying to protect his job? And how much of it is just how much confidence they have in Dart in general? Dable would not address any of that. But I believe that it wasn't just, hey, we think Dart gives us a better chance. It was them accurately, and I'll give them credit for one thing, Dave. They accurately realize that the Dallas Cowboys offensive game was a mirage. They accurately understand that despite Russell Wilson having a career day that day, they watch Caleb Williams suddenly look like an NFL quarterback out of nowhere against the same defense. And they say, you know what? If we're properly evaluating this, we understand that the 15 total points we scored in those two games is not the anomaly. The 37 points in Dallas is. It's a panic move, though. I mean, it's, even if you have confidence in Dart, even if you're frustrated with Russell Wilson, it's a panic move, Dave. And I think if they had just won that Dallas game, not only will we not be having this Dart conversation this week, we wouldn't have had it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 more weeks at least, right? But it's the record. That's why Dart's in this early. It's all those other factors, but it's the record and it's the job security.
Well, what did John Mara say when he addressed the media last year? I want to see wins, right? It wasn't I want to see competitive losses against Dallas or, a decent defensive effort against Washington. I need to see wins. And Pat, listen, you're around this team every single day. You know better than me. They're 1-14 in their last 15 games. They're 3-17 in their last 20 games. And not only is the record an unmitigated embarrassment, but the one win in the last 15 games, you'd say, actually hurt them and didn't even help them. Because if they had lost that game, we'd be talking about Cam Ward. We talked about this on my radio show this morning. And it doesn't make any sense. Like if you wanted Dable and Shane back and you're John Mara, that's your decision. Okay. But wouldn't you tell them last year before the Colts game, you love Cam Ward? I don't care if you win this game or not. In fact, if you need to lose this game, that makes sense. But if that's the quarterback, they won that game and then tried to trade for him. Like, can you make it make any sense, or is it as puzzling and mind-boggling as it is for you as it is for me?
Yeah, no, it is puzzling. I think what you have to accept is that even though they are very good at pumping their narrative and at times propaganda out through the national media, the Giants do not have the airtight blueprint and plan that you would hope as a fan that they have. They have been consistently adjusting and recalibrating based on failed attempts, whether it's player acquisition, whether it's losing too many games, whatever it is. The Giants have been flying by the seat of their pants. It started with after that playoff berth and playoff win in 2022. They forgot, not that they forgot, they told themselves we're way ahead now of where we thought we would be. That, Dave, I can't even describe. And I know, listen, I've heard you say this too. So I know you know exactly what I'm about to say, but it's like this organization, this is why it's not just the coach and not just the GM. This is the organizational problem here in New York with the Maras and the Tishes. They do not know how to evaluate themselves. They can't stop themselves from overreaching and reaching conclusions preemptively.
The offensive game plan on Sunday night was mind-boggling to me. You have, I don't care what anybody says, Malik Neighbors is a star, and I didn't think he was at the level of a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson. I think maybe I've adjusted my opinion. He's an absolute star, and I think it's almost criminal that until the fourth quarter, the ball did not get into his hands. I get it that Spagnuolo is very bright. There's one thing you want to take away on this Giants offense, and you're going to play, over the top coverage. I get it. There has to be a way you can figure out to get the ball into the hands of a playmaker, an end around, a screen with blockers in front, something. I mean, so it's kind of a two-part question, Pat. A, how does that happen? B, do you think they adjust and are smarter moving forward with the future, hopefully franchise quarterback starting on Sunday in Jackson Dart?
I think that's a great point by you. I think you're hitting the nail on the head about this opens the door or reminds you why this is not just, it's hard to have confidence just because they're changing the QB that everything's going to be fixed. There's many reasons, but the one is what you just hit on. Why was the coaching staff on offense not prepared to, number one, coming out, get him the ball at all? And then number two, when you see how Spagnuolo is defending them, they didn't have a way to get neighbors across the field more into windows of the zone. To your point, if they're forcing you to run the ball, get the ball in his hands in the backfield, jet sweeps, whatever it is. I'm actually doing a story for the Daily News on exactly this because I think you're hitting it. Like, it's such a great point. Outside of Dart becoming the quarterback here, the number one story here, and yeah, it's the job security, is what the heck was that with Malik on Sunday night against the Kansas City Chiefs? And how the heck can anyone have confidence in Dable and Kafka, whoever the quarterback is, when they can't get the top receiver on their team and one of the best receivers in the league the ball? Dave, you and I both know that, like, this is something I've been hammering. Like, I firmly believe Jameis Winston right now, at this point in his career, is a better quarterback than Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I agree.
You and I both know, even if Jameis threw 2 picks in that game too, just like Russell Wilson, there is no way on God's green earth he would have gone even 5 plays without throwing the ball to Malik against the Chiefs, let alone 3 freaking quarters until he gets his first catch. So obviously Jameis not in the picture. It's Jackson Dart now. How about this for concerning? Malik's not practicing today. He's on the field. They're keeping him off the field today. They didn't say exactly why yet. Maybe it's a rest day. Maybe it's his back. He's taken all his reps with Russell Wilson, Dave. So now the first practice that Jackson has of 3 to prepare for the Chargers, Malik's not running routes and catching passes for him.
So you talk about, I didn't even know that Malik didn't practice, but isn't that kind of a thing with him though? Like they're very cautious with him and will give him, rest days and stuff. That's what I've heard. So obviously it's kind of great news. Secondarily, I think, outside of maybe Neighbors and Dart now, the most important piece of this offense was Andrew Thomas, who looked good in his pitch count on Sunday. Couple things. A, I didn't know that was going to happen. B, would I now assume he came out of this well and is going to be healthier this coming Sunday? Because if he doesn't play and protect the blind side of Jackson Dart, then it could be a disaster against San Diego or the LA Chargers, I should say.
Right. No, I prefer when you call him San Diego. Yeah, Thomas, this is part of the reason, from my vantage point, this is part of the reason why even the people who disagreed or thought they should wait on Dart acquiesced at a certain point here, was because you couldn't put Jackson on the field with Marcus Bowe as their starting left tackle. The guy gave up anywhere between 7 and 9 pressures last game against Kansas City, depending on which site you're using, Next Gen or PFF. And he's a 5th-round rookie. He's not supposed to be their starting left tackle, so I don't even put it on the kid. You have Joe Shane's James Hudson signing. Now you can't play that guy. You can't trust him. So the good news here is that Dart is in part because Andrew Thomas played 28 snaps on offense and looked good. And Brian Daboll, now this is what the coach has said. He said twice now, Monday and Wednesday, that Thomas came out well out of the game physically. So you would imagine that means he's going to play more in this game. I don't know how much more. I don't know if that means a full game. I would be surprised if it was a full game, Dave, only because after the game, Thomas said, I felt good. And then somebody said, did you feel good enough that even though you had the snap count limit, that you felt like, oh, you know what? If I had to play this full game, I could. And he said, well, I could say that, but he said the whole point here is that we're making sure we're limiting my reps to a certain level so that I don't have a setback. And I just hate hearing that word from a guy after he played. And he's telling me he's good, but he's telling me we're still guarding against a setback. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It just makes you concerned. They've obviously had him on a plan. He's had himself on a plan. And my guess is they'll try to see if he can go closer to the full game, but that it'll be dangerous to do so. And they'll probably limit him I don't know, maybe, this is a total guess, but maybe they go to 40 snaps instead of closer to 30,
At the end of the day, when we close the book on this game Sunday, and I know it's a total conjecture and guess really at this point. What do you think happens with Jackson Dart? You think we game ends? Forget about even the final score, and we're like, you know what? I can see it. Or do you think it's like because if they lose and he looks awful, I mean the heat that, and I know it's his first start, and I remember Eli Manning back in the day and how brutal he was, and he had a better offensive line and better weapons around him than Jackson Dart does. But this is a disaster right now, and if he doesn't come out of this game with some promise, I think the fan base will have their ire really up. What's your best guess as we're a couple days away from this one?
Yeah, so I think Dart's a gamer. I think he's a good player. I think you're going to see some good and some bad, mainly because he hasn't played against a game plan specific to him. And now it's Jesse Minter dialing up pressures and one of the best scoring defense in the league. I think they're fourth in scoring defense, the Chargers. They only allow 16.7 points per game. One thing I'm confident about is that, and as you've seen, Daboll was doing it early, even with Russ as the starter. I think their red zone offense will be better with Dart in the game. I think he gives them more options. I believe his mobility, his toughness, and just the amount of calls that you can make with him in the game versus Russ because of his skill set.
Mhm.
I think if they can get the ball down there, they can run the ball. You got Scattaboo, you got him, you got his arm, all that kind of thing. I think they'll score more down there. Will they get down there enough is the question, right? How will he handle protection issues if the Chargers defensive line is getting to him? I don't think they're going to win the game. I don't think they can win the game. I think they're at such a coaching deficit as well as a talent deficit. And I think the Chargers receiving core is really going to give them a lot of problems on the other side. I think Dart's going to show enough promise that the fans are going to say, why wasn't this guy in the whole time? This first game is not like, oh, win or else or you're fired game.
Yeah, next
But if
week.
they go down to if they go down to New Orleans and lose, and he looks bad 2 weeks in a row, and they lose to Spencer Rattler and the Saints, and Kellen Moore gets his first win, do the Giants recognize that this needs all to all be blown up?
So it's funny because I talked to you know Jordan Renan, and I don't think he can hold a candle to you. Like I'm now established the fact that you're much better than him after our conversation today. But I like Jordan; he's a friend. But I will say this: I asked him the other day, Shane Dable tied at the hip, and he's because he's told me for a long, they're not tied at the hip. They're not tied at the hip. Like Dable's in very tenuous situation, and Shane is not. Like he's probably going to keep his job. And I said, so if we have another 3-14 or get 2-15, what he goes, they'll have to clean house. You agree? Like, does it just come down to how many wins they get, or does it come down to what Jackson Dart looks like?
I think that I think they want to. They listen. They ownership, as you saw from keeping them from 3-14, they don't want to fire either of these guys. But I agree with Jordan that if they don't go completely in the tank, it's trending towards the GM being back and the coach not. I think that's complete lunacy. I also think it's hypocritical because all they sold us, Dave, since their hiring was what? Collaborative, collaboration, package deal. These guys, oh, they're tied at the hip. They're always communicating. It was always their way of trashing Joe Judge and referring to Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge and blaming them for everything. And now what? You're going to point your finger at one guy and not the other? Well, guess what? That's what happened coming out of last season. I reported this in the spring, in the early spring. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, they were working basically as separate entities coming out of last season for several months. The reason was those conversations with John Mara and together about where this team needed to go and where they stood did not leave Brian Daboll feeling like everyone was in his corner, you know? And
Mhm.
you heard it in the coming out of the season of John Mara saying, like, I suggested that Brian give up play calling. And then Dable was like, he didn't suggest that. I said that. He's like, whoa.
All right, I don't want to rush you off without giving the opportunity of discussing what you're working on. So I wanted to have you on because you're great and you're there and you have your finger on the pulse of stuff. But tell people what you're working on, how they can consume it, and have at it.
Thank you. Yeah, no. So in addition to my coverage at the New York Daily News of the NFL and the Giants, I'm on YouTube. The handle is PL on NFL. The podcast is Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. We have great guests every week. Would love to have you on sometime, Dave. I love your work. You're so super knowledgeable and rational as well. And
But
you
crazy,
know,
like rational up to a point, and then I lose my mind and I go crazy.
but you need some passion to balance out the rational, and you need some rational to balance out the crazy, right?
I'm your
But
guy.
yeah, we got guest podcasts, and then I go live on Talking Ball Mondays and Thursday nights, and then post-game live really is the bread and butter. Like after the Giants games, after I come out of the locker room, talking to Dable, talking to the players, I file for the Daily News, and then we go live with fans. We're going to start bringing guests onto those as well, and really give the fans a voice who are in the stadium or driving home or at their house watching the team. And I can bring you guys information and analysis direct to you right away, fresh out of the stadium. And usually I think I can tell people a few things in those that they haven't heard anywhere else yet because I'm just boots on the ground.
That's awesome. Well, listen, continued success. I hope it's great. Reach out. I would love to come on at some point, and after a win would be even better, but I don't know how many opportunities I'll have for that. So let me know when you want me. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll catch up down the road, all right? So if you like that live stream, check out this video or these other live streams. And for the love of God, subscribe to us on YouTube. It'll be the best decision of your entire life.